Okay. All glories to Mother Natasha, all glories to Religion of Love, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the Supreme Lord. O Lord God, please help us live out these teachings and be an example of love in the world. Jai. Okay, so picking up where we left off in the Book of Wisdom. Then she spoke on tolerance as another of the signs of wisdom, saying, So great is the love of the devotee of God, that he willingly tolerates anything to serve his Lord. And one of the most difficult things he must tolerate is to be misunderstood. And we, the disciples, knew full well of what she spoke, for we had suffered much of this very thing. So for us she told this tale, starting, One fine day the circus came to town. All the people rushed to go, for they wished to see the famous lion tamer they had heard so much about. The fool went too. The lion tamer's act was indeed amazing, and the people marveled to see a single man controlling 8 wild animals. From time to time, the lions would give a mighty roar, and growling show their teeth and claws, which only served to remind the audience of how dangerous the ferocious beasts were. The high point of the act came when the lion tamer placed a sugar cube on his tongue and put his head into the open jaws of the largest lion. The audience held its breath. Then, at a signal from the lion tamer, the lion took the sugar cube from the tamer's tongue. At this, the audience went wild, shouting, clapping, stamping their feet, all except the fool. When the din died down, the fool was heard to say, What's so great about that? Even I could do it. Everyone heard, and so, unfortunately, did the lion tamer, who came out into the audience and stood before the fool. So you think it's easy? Said the tamer to the fool. Yes, answered the fool. And I suppose, retorted the lion tamer, you think you could do it too? Of course, said the fool. After all, it's so simple even a lion could do it. After she had finished the story, an older man said, I am a follower of the religion of love, and often have I heard you speak in stories so that the people can easily understand the message that you bring. And this story speaks clearly on how those who are foolish will never understand those who are wise. And, he said, the wise would be foolish to expect it. Then he asked her to explain further. So she said, The fool is what he is, a fool. The lion tamer, though, is the devotee of God. The wild animals are the senses, which includes the mind. It is the devotee's ability to control himself by himself which will make him successful in serving God. And so she came to the next sign of wisdom, self-control, saying, The devotee of God, given choice, has chosen God. And a man said, I too would choose for God, but lack the ability of self-control. For the senses being strong, even the strongest may be overcome. God is stronger still, said she. Know that in choosing God, God has chosen you. And the more your desire for God, the more will God give to you the ability to fulfill your desire. And the next sign of wisdom was non-violence. And her teaching of non-violence was that not only does it mean we are not to be the source of suffering, but that we are also to be the cure for suffering. Knowing that the core cause of suffering is ignorance, the devotee of God makes his mission the giving of the knowledge that takes away the pain of the world. Now in this time a man came to her, that he might be heard by her, so to ask her blessing, and speaking with passion said, Though I am not a disciple, still have I read and re-read all the teachings of the religion of love, the words now being so deeply engraved upon my mind that my tongue may easily recite them. Believing this to be the pure message of God, willingly would I sacrifice my life's blood and the life's blood of any other, that all might believe. And the master looked up sharply and said sternly, No! You may have memorized the words of the religion of love, but you have missed the message of the religion of love. The people will not believe because of our words, but because of our love. And knowing him to be a man of blood, she said, By force of violence the knee may be made to bend, and the head to bow, but the heart cannot be forced to love, for love forced is no longer love. Do you not know? Can you not see, she said, force and violence in the name of God is the clear sign of a failed faith. The religion of love is not about the love of power. The religion of love, she said, is about the power of love. And she soothed him down with this story, saying, The sun and the north wind were having an argument over who was the most powerful, so they decided to have a contest. Do you see that man down there? Asked the north wind. The one walking with his coat on? Yes, said the sun. Well, said the north wind, let us see which one of us can make him take his coat off. All right, agreed the sun. I'll go first, said the wind confidently. Then the north wind began to blow his icy air upon the man, and harder and harder he blew, but the more violently he blew, the tighter the man wrapped his coat about him. You have failed, said the sun. Now it's my turn. The sun then sat high in the sky and beamed his radiant warmth upon the man. The man took off his coat. Okay, let's hear a little commentary. Tolerance. So then she spoke on tolerance as another of the signs of wisdom, saying, So great is the love of the devotee of God that he willingly tolerates anything to serve his Lord. Okay, tolerance. Like Jesus taught in the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who've trespassed against us. So we must be tolerant. And this tolerance is kind of like that of a mother with her child, a little baby. Now, the baby smells, the baby cries, the baby might spit on the mother, might even hit the mother, but the mother still tolerates and takes care of the baby, right? So this is the type of tolerance the devotee of God has. He willingly tolerates everything and anything for the service of the Lord. So we must have tolerance and understand that everyone out there is trying to do good. What they think is good, but they may be in ignorance and therefore may not actually cause any good. But we tolerate. And it's not just people, of course, all the things around us. Like, for example, let's say you're trying to chant your rounds and there's a lot of loud noises or loud machinery or something. A good thought would be, these things are teaching us tolerance, how to stay focused on chanting under pressure. See a little bit of a tweak of consciousness, the mindset of a devotee. And we can tolerate anything if we have knowledge. And tolerating the hardships that come in life is how we come to our true self. We tolerate. For example, if you step on a nail, you have to take the nail out. It's going to hurt. You have to tolerate that. Same with all of our illusions, our ignorance, our pains, our angers and fears, all the things inside of us that are the cause of our suffering. they too need to be removed, and we have to tolerate the unpleasantness of whatever God sends to remind us of what's hidden within, and the often uncomfortable process of that purification, that detoxing of our ignorance and illusion. So we tolerate, we take the lessons, and we grow with it. And devotee can easily tolerate everything when he sees everything as a blessing given by God. Not just all the good things that happen, we thank you, Lord, but even the hardships, the difficulties, because they're all a teacher, a teaching, something that's showing us inside ourselves that we need to clear out, or there's a lesson that we must learn. So the devotee sees everything as a blessing. But we don't tolerate everything, mind you. We do not tolerate injustice, nor do we tolerate unnecessary suffering. These things we fight. But the way we fight is we first come to a state of love, or at least to a cool head, so that what we do is not from our emotions or reaction, but is us consciously acting from our intelligence, from our knowledge. And one of the most difficult things we must tolerate is being misunderstood, right? So, as it says earlier in the book, who will understand one who walks in this world yet is already with God? For example, a devotee of God who's made his goal in life the living out of the message of God, to live as a servant of the servants of God, not as the world teaches us how to live, conditions us how we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to do, but acting out of our natural state, the eternal servitor of the Lord, which is, in a sense, going against the grain of society. Be taken to spiritual life, becoming a devotee, is like swimming upstream. It's very misunderstood by people. I've been misunderstood many times, in many circles, by many people. It can be, a little challenging. That's why spiritual life is much easier when you can associate in the company of devotees. Because when you're amongst devotees who are also on the path, who understand what's going on inside of you, especially things coming up through chanting, etc., we understand it's the purification. We understand, the things that we've given up and taken up, etc. Devotee association makes life so much easier in spiritual life. And then there's the story of the lion tamer and the fool. And if you didn't catch it, when the fool said, it's so simple, even a lion can do it. So everyone's marveling at the lion tamer and how self-controlled he is and keeping control of all the wild lions, right? Who are very dangerous. Kind of like the senses. Oh, we'll get to that. And what does the fool focus on? Say, it's so easy, even a lion could do it. Meaning, he's focused on the sugar cube. I could do that. I could take the sugar cube out of your mouth too. What's so great about that? So he's totally missing the whole point of the act. Just like most people misunderstand the devotee of God who has controlled their senses and the mind so that they can engage them, our mind and senses, in the higher transcendental activities of devotional service for the pleasure of God and for our self-purification. And I have heard you speak in stories so that the people can easily understand the message that you bring. Yes, teaching stories. Mother Tasha used many teaching stories. We're people who love to be entertained, are we not? Don't we love stories? We love movies. We like TV shows. So teaching stories are a common way in which the message is shared with the people. And they stick. We catch lessons in these stories. And this story speaks clearly on how those who are foolish will never understand those who are wise. And the wise will be foolish to expect it. I've heard this teaching ring in my head so many times. It's a good one. Those who are foolish will never understand those who are wise, and the wise will be foolish to expect it. So, it's something, another thing that the devotee has to tolerate is, again, you can't expect people to get you, understand you. You're basically living opposite in the, mainstream of society, how most people live. And you're misunderstood. And so you got to, expect that. And not expect to be understood. Otherwise, you'll be very frustrated. And as a nice quote by Mark Twain, he said, "Don't never argue with a fool, because he'll drag you down to his level and then beat you with experience." So, not being gotten or understood is one of the harsh realities the devotee must tolerate. The devotee of God, the lion tamer, though, is the devotee of God. The wild animals are the senses, which includes the mind. It is the devotee's ability to control himself by himself which will make him successful in serving God. Right? You got to be able to control your own self. You can't rely on any other person or outside force, otherwise you won't be successful in spiritual life. You got to be a warrior. You got to be strong. You have to be able to control your own mind and senses. And so she came to the next sign of wisdom, self-control. The devotee of God, given choice, has chosen God. So being self-controlled is easy if you have firm conviction in your choices, in your goal in life. People say, I've made up my mind and there's nothing going to change it. Yeah, so it's not too difficult to be self-controlled if you're so fixed, laser-like focus on your goal and what you aim to achieve. And it's all about choices. Our life is based on tiny little decisions we make every single day. Really. And a man said, I too would choose for God, but lack the ability of self-control. For the senses being strong, even the strongest person can be overcome by them. Yeah, it's true. There's many examples of great saints and sages that would meditate and doing their practice by a bank of a river, and then a beautiful woman goes by and they get distracted and, fall from their practice. The senses are so strong. My goodness. She says, God is stronger still. Know that in choosing God, God has chosen you. And the more your desire for God, the more will God give to you the ability to fulfill your desire. So we always are depending on the mercy of God. We really rely on God's mercy. We totally depend 24/7, really, for God to carry us. But to do that, we first need to keep our minds and senses fixed on the transcendental, ecstatic, spiritual, in devotional service. Nothing and nobody can really manipulate you if you can control your own thoughts. And all disturbances, really. Things happen outside of us, but the ones that really shake us from our path, shake us from our goal, disturb our spiritual life, are all disturbances from the mind, not the outside things we think. Nobody can really upset you or make you feel a certain way. It is my mind that's doing all that. And it's much easier and quite a habit of us to blame other people and not take responsibility for what we've created in our life. Remember, our thoughts bring forth feelings, which bring forth our actions, and our actions bring back reactions to us. So we are responsible for whatever is going on. And it's all starting by our own thoughts. And the beauty is that this is in our control. We can control the mind. And after coming to spiritual life, the world and its miseries, they don't change. The only one who can change is you. and you change it by your mind. Spiritual realization is beyond the mind, but the mind can be a huge block to realization. So, first thing in spiritual life is using our given tools to control the mind. It's really the vast majority of our spiritual life is really working on our own mind. And to control the mind, don't negate it, but give it something to do. It's very simple. And you remember the analogy we've given before in classes of the wild elephant just making a mess, going crazy in the marketplace, taking all the bananas and fruits and produce and destroying everything. And then comes the mahout, the elephant trainer, and he gives the elephant his favorite stick to hold on to. Now the elephant's holding on to a stick, and now he can't destroy anything. he's peaceful in the marketplace again. So it's just like that. Mahatma Gandhi, he said he was stronger at the age of 70 than when he was 20. And that's because he was constantly chanting the holy name of God. He gave his mind something to hold on to, that stick. And the easiest way to control the mind and senses is to engage them in devotional service. Not like I said, don't negate it. Don't be like, oh, bad mind, or don't think about that, da-da-da-da. Rather than that, spend all that time in that circle, which is an endless loop of negativity and illusion. Rather, just give the mind something to do. Chant the holy names, hear the holy word of God and try to practice it. Try to remember God. Engage in loving service. There's so many ways we can engage our senses in various things. Use our tongue to taste food that's been offered to God, or our nose to smell flowers or incense that have been offered to God. Anything that brings us remembrance. Our ears listen to beautiful music and devotion, or chant the holy names more. That's how we control the mind, by engaging it. And the more we engage our mind and senses in transcendental activities, that's how they become purified, spiritualized. And it's important to know that we can't control what's outside of us, only inside. We can control what and how we feel, our own emotions, and keep ourselves in a peaceful and happy state, which is the best place to be in to come to good solutions in difficult circumstances. And I'll share a little story Mother Tasha told of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada, he could shout at someone and then immediately turn around and be peaceful to another person. And he was acting in that moment, not reacting. That was a conscious thing that he was doing. He was in control of himself, and he used the shouting as a tool to be effective. Not like how we shout out of anger. No, he knew exactly how to talk to somebody, to push them in the right way, this and that. So he was in full control. And someone on the outside may not understand it. They may, again, be misunderstood. They're like, oh, why is he doing this? Or da-da-da. But they don't know what's going on in the heart of a devotee of God, what's in their consciousness. So we act, we don't react. We come to a peaceful state, and out of consciousness, out of our knowledge and our intelligence, we act. Not react out of our emotional state. It takes practice, self-control, right? And the next sign of wisdom was non-violence. And her teaching of non-violence was that not only does it mean we are not to be the source of suffering, but that we'll also be the cure for suffering. And knowing that the core cause of suffering is ignorance, the devotee of God makes his mission the giving of the knowledge that takes away the pain of the world. So, ahimsa, non-violence. We're vegetarians, we try not to hurt anyone by word or deed, but we take it further. We take it a step further to be the cure for that suffering. And that's why we're a preaching movement. To go out and give the message, give the cure for the suffering, cure ourselves and cure others. It's like when the oxygen masks come down when the airplane's in an emergency, They say first you put the oxygen on yourself and then help another. The healer must heal himself before he heals another. So we cure ourselves from suffering, and then we share that with others, that cure. And then here comes this guy. Now in this time, this man came asking for blessing, and this is the guy who says, I've read and reread the teachings of the religion of love, the words now being so deeply engraved upon my mind that my tongue may easily recite them. So, okay, so he's memorized the words. He's able to parrot them back at will. Okay, there's a lot of people who do that with Scripture. And believing this to be the pure message of God, willingly would I sacrifice my life's blood and the life's blood of any other that all might believe. Whoa, okay. We've seen this before, right? You know, we call them terrorists, right? Crazy fanatics, you know, bloodlusty warmongers in the name of religion. No. This is, and Mother Natasha, she immediately says, no. You may have memorized the words, but you totally missed the message. Remember, the message of God is not heard with the ears or the mind, it's heard with the heart. And it doesn't matter if you can memorize the words of Scripture. Unless you come to love, they're just words. It's just on the surface. They may touch your tongue, but not your heart. And they might have enough religion to make them hate, but not enough to make them love. These are the quotes in the Religion of Love book. She says, the people will not believe because of our words, but because of our love. Right. I mean, let's say someone is a really nasty, mean person, but he says good things, says the right things, right? But no one's going to trust him. No one's going to care what he says because, you know, that person is quite despicable, right? And you can't force love. It says right here, by force of violence the knee may be made to bend and the head to bow, but the heart cannot be forced to love. Can't force love. For love forced is no longer love. Just isn't. Do you not know? Can you not see, she said, force and violence in the name of religion, name of God, is a clear sign of a failed faith. Yeah. So anyone preaching violence, hate, all this divisions, or acting out such hate and violence, you should run away from as far as you can, and do not take heed to any of the nonsense they say. My goodness. And you see the results of their preaching. What happens? My goodness. It just causes more suffering in the world. And are they brought to love? Are others brought to love? No. It's nonsense. And this guy who wants to, I'll kill I will die for this message. Okay, okay, fine. But Mother Natasha said, we don't need any drama rama heroics. No. To die for a cause is courageous, sure, but to live for a cause is far, far greater. And we need to live out the religion of love, to be the example of the love of it. Do you not know, cannot see? Force and violence in the name of God is a clear sign of a failed faith. The religion of love is not about the love of power. The religion of love, she said, is about the power of love. The power of love. You know that song? It's a nice thing. We're not about the love of power, we're about the power of love. It's beautiful. And that's actually where the power comes from, to be able to preach effectively, to share the message, to actually touch the heart of another person, is by practicing purely the message, not with the ego of the mind and all the ignorance of your own material desires. No, but actually following and practicing purely the message of God, without change or alteration, exactly as it was given, following in the footsteps of the messengers of God, of God's representatives, the spiritual masters, coming to love, living the teachings. That is where the power comes from someone's words to move the heart of another person. Comes from being it, comes from living it. Not from, forcing and just listen to what I say, No. that beautiful teaching of St. Francis of Assisi, always preach the gospel, always, and sometimes with words. Emphasis on living it. And the nice story of the north wind and the sun having a contest who is stronger. And the wind says, see that man with the coat on? I'll try and blow it off and make him take it off. It's okay, you go first. And so he's blowing hard, trying to make him remove his coat. And he thinks if he blows super, super hard, it would just fly off him, right? But what happens? The man, he just doubles down and holds the coat even tighter because he's freezing, right? And the more you try to force someone to listen to me, believe me, do this, do that, this is the way, da-da-da-da-da. That doesn't make people come to love. In fact, for many, that will make them resist, fight back, and completely reject it all. No. And what does the sun do? He's like, you failed, my turn. And he just sits up high and just shines his radiant warmth. And that's how a real spiritual revolution happens. It's when one person becomes again the lover of God, and that love grows and grows like a great lamp that's lit, a great fire, kind of like a lighthouse, and it just shines and all around, and others are inspired by that light, and they are curious, they inquire, they also want to experience that love. They also want to know the truth that they see. So, okay, I'll stop there for now. Went a little over. Start recording. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Is that a comment? That is. I was first a little confused about the fool and the lion story. I think you explained it a little better. But it's just a little unclear. I mean, the analogy between the fool and, I guess, everyone else, and the devotee being the lion tamer. You explained it, but I was a little unsure.
Oh, yeah. I could try to explain a little better. To be honest, that one took a while for me to really understand, too. Saying what are the lions? They represent the senses and the mind, which the devotee of God controls. And of course, before that, it talks about the devotee of God's misunderstood. And what is the fool doing? He's criticizing the lion tamer, thinking that that's nothing much, not so great, but basically just saying, he's just misunderstanding what's going on inside the lion tamer. The great discipline, the great self-control, the conviction, the renunciation, etc. Having chosen something that isn't easy to do. In fact, becoming again a devotee of God and living opposite the ways of the world is not an easy thing to do. Mind you, when everybody and everything around you is going in one current, one flow of materialism, and then you're just rowing upstream the opposite direction. The story itself, I get it, how it's a little hard to really draw a quite clear and linear, comparison. But that's basically it. That the fool is a foolish, but he doesn't understand what's going on. And so, like, for example, the story of Srila Prabhupada, who would shout at one person and be nice to another person because he knows what's going on in the mind of his own disciples, and he knows what they need, what they need to hear. And a foolish person on the outside might be like, oh, why is he so flip-floppy? Why is that so-called master, behaving like this towards that person, but this to that person? He's showing favoritism, or is he being biased? So, foolish person is not going to understand any of this. See, they don't know what's going on in the devotee of God, and this is, and I've heard this story actually, that there was one guy, one disciple of Srila Prabhupada, who he was very, very hard on all the time. He really pegged him down a lot. Like, he'll be nice to everybody, and then he would show up and he'd be really hard on that one guy. And people outside didn't know what was going on. They thought that, their mind was thinking all these different things. They were speculating, and they were finding fault in the spiritual master. But as time would prove, the master knew what he was doing, because he would eventually send that young disciple to another country, and he was very successful preaching there. And he would later say that if it wasn't for my master being so hard on me, I would have never been able to succeed. Him being hard on me strengthened me and also humbled him. So it's what was needed. And the spiritual master knows better than us. So of course, Prabhupada loves, any spiritual master loves all their disciples, obviously. They don't pick, there's not like this favoritism and unequal treatment. No, none of that nonsense. But you can see how the acts of a devotee can be misunderstood from an outsider's perspective, or someone not, in spiritual consciousness. They might not understand the intention, the consciousness behind the actions. Just like, we've mentioned Arjuna and the Bhagavad Gita and how we had to fight. And you're studying Mahabharata, and eventually it's going to come to the big war. The big battle is coming, and it's huge. The massive war of Kurukshetra, and there's a lot of fighting, a lot of killing. And from an outside perspective, someone not acquainted with spiritual knowledge or devotion, they might criticize Arjuna and say, "Oh, he's a killer. Look at he's a warrior. Look how many soldiers he's mowing down. Oh my gosh, bloodthirsty." This, they don't understand. He was acting under the command of God and upholding religious principles. He was performing his duty honorably. So again, being misunderstood is one of the hardest things a devotee must tolerate, because people don't get you. Like the fool, everyone's in the crowd is like, wow, the lion tamer is amazing, how he's able to control everybody, and oh man, control the animals, I mean to say. And the fool just doesn't get the what's going on there. He's seeing something else and finding fault, and missing the whole point, and also wrongly criticizing and judging the lion tamer, for example. So kind of like that. I hope that elaborates a bit more.
Yeah, that makes sense. The only part I was most confused about was because, the fool, everybody was getting it, but it was just the fool that didn't understand.
Right. Well, the fool character, which we see in a lot of things, he's a very, very foolish fool. he's used to show the extreme spectrum of ignorance, really. Not that everyone is that foolish. Like in the previous story of the fool, he's boring a hole in the boat. Remember? And everyone's like, "Idiot, you're gonna drown us!" It's like, what is it? You mind your own business. I'm making the hole under my own seat. So yeah, he's a little extreme, to really emphasize. So, some of these stories we gotta exaggerate a bit to really hammer a point down. For example. Anyone have any other questions, perchance? You smell something? We're in a park somewhere, and some rich aroma has wafted through here. I don't know what that is, but I will tolerate it. What can I do?
If no one else has a question, I have another one.
Oh yeah, please do.
So, there's the wind and the sun story, and I was thinking, what can the wind do to get the coat out, the sun just has to exist, but the wind, it's blowing, it's trying its best. What could the wind have done? What?
That is also another story that I scratched my head with for many years. Just like the lion tamer one. I think because I was trying to take it so literally and trying to compare it, so exactly to the scenario. But, because you think well, yeah, he's icy north wind, he's holding the coat. Of course he's cold, he wants to hold on tighter. But that's what I tried to explain was the whole point is you're trying to force someone to do something versus being an example, an inspiration that they choose for themselves. I guess that would be the whole point. I mean, obviously, yeah, it's so hot. Yeah, I'm going to take my coat off. Oh, it's so cold. Yeah, I'm going to hold on. But that's the point, is you can't force someone to do the things you want or force them to come to knowledge or understanding. They have to choose that themselves. And as it said, the devotee of God, in choosing God, God has chosen you. So the devotee of God given choice has chosen God. That's what I would say. So we choose. No, you can't force somebody to understand. Someone has to want to learn. And I know we've had many conversations with people who, even though you have all the right knowledge and the other person may be in the wrong and maybe in ignorance and not understand properly, and you're trying to tell them properly, you're trying to give them the correct knowledge, but they're not hearing anything, and nothing you can say is going to, quote unquote, change their mind, because they don't want to change their mind. They don't want to change. That's the thing. We see the devotee of God, looks at his own mistakes, is not afraid to, look inside himself, not blame outside, choosing to be humbled, to learn, to grow. It's as I said, life is a collection of little daily choices every single day. So many little choices we make. And most people, they got in this habit to look outside themselves, to stay stagnant, to not grow, to not change. They don't have the desire to it. And this comes out of some ignorance, some indolence, some laziness, but mostly from a lack of desire. They don't desire to change. They don't desire to grow. They don't desire more, to be more in this life, or to achieve the perfection of this life. So, when someone wants to hear, when someone wants to learn, only then can, something happen. But if you don't want to learn, don't want to change, you're so closed off. It doesn't matter how much you throw at somebody, how much knowledge, how much this, that, it's not going to have an effect. They're not going to remove the coat. Or in this say, we can use the coat as an analogy for one's ignorance, for one's illusions. And you can't force someone to want to let go of, force someone to get rid of them. Like, for example, I cannot forcefully purify you or you. I cannot chant for you. I cannot, become more knowledgeable for you. I can't inject you with intelligence. These are things that you have to want for yourself, first and foremost. So, the idea of the sun, who's just shining, and just shine his light in his warmth, is like the devotee who just is or be's the message of God, and be an example of love, of peace, of tolerance, of self-control, all these qualities that manifest in one. Be an example of that, so that others are inspired by that they choose themselves to be like that too. And that's kind of how we actually get a real idea and grow desire for spiritual life and realization, is when we see it lived out in someone else. And that's why it's so important that we become the living example of the message for others to see, to be that shining example. Because unless people see the message of God lived out, then you don't know what is possible, or what can be achieved, or all this ignorance illusion that actually can be released, and our natural state of love, eternality, and bliss actually be awakened. When we have so many ideas of what is spiritual, what is religious, and you have all these people that, out of their ignorance, they think that this is spiritual. Remember, we said people are all trying to do good, but what they think is good, but out of ignorance, they may not have the right idea. So we've seen people, like, we're traveling now to the Pacific Northwest, And there's going to be a lot of people, well, I've met many, who have their own idea of spirituality, and it may involve, drugs and bright colors and techno music and more drugs and just whatever God knows hodgepodge of, woo-wooism. They think that's so spiritual. I'm so spiritual. Oh yeah, So that's how we get these ideas of what is spiritual. Like we met this what was it? This one priest in Texas, and he had a much higher pitched voice, but he always tried to talk like this with a deep voice, because if I have a deeper voice, that means I'm wiser and you will respect me more, because that is more religious, more spiritual, more holy. And so this is people's ideas, right? But when you actually see and hear a real devotee of God, a real pure lover of God, who is spiritually realized, who is actually enlightened, and you see how they act, and you see what they do and how they live, and you're like, wow, that totally, and you get inspired by the real, and you're like, wow, I want to taste some of that too, because it's genuine. It's not this superficial, spirituality, but it's a genuine awakening and realization within the heart of all that is true and of love and of God, of our natural state. I mean, it's literally, when I was with Mother Natasha, I was literally with an angel. I was with someone who was already in the spiritual world. I was with someone who was already situated in the eternal occupation of the soul in endless, unalloyed, ceaseless devotional service to the Lord in love. I mean, the way Mother Natasha acted, the way any pure devotee or pure spiritual master acts, is exactly as an individual soul in the spiritual world would be acting. Not us here in this material world, conditioned with these material minds and material consciousness, but an actual pure spirit soul here in this world, in a material body, in the flesh, that we can see and hear and touch. And wow. So the greatest service we can possibly do in this life for everybody, for the entire planet, if you really want to make a difference, if you really want to help and bring others, to love, to cure suffering in this world, then the greatest service is you become spiritually realized. You become the devotee of God. And it's a lot of work on yourself. And this is not selfish. This is soulfish. Lullium. To be greedy for purification, greedy for knowledge, greedy for more understanding, for more purification, for more love of God. And if you do that, you work on yourself, time in and time out for years, it doesn't have to be long, could be a whole life. We're always improving, never ends. But you be that shining example, like how Mother Natasha was, how Srila Prabhupada was, how Mother Teresa was, Even Gandhi, who, among saints he was a politician, and among politicians he was a saint. He wasn't exactly 100% there. He was really caught up in worldly stuff, but still, for the average person, my goodness, was he a very staunch practitioner of his religious principles. And of course he chanted the names of God every day, and you see how much he inspired everybody. Oh my gosh. How much Jesus changed the world, how much Muhammad, how much Buddha, So you be like that. Be as the message of God. Be the lover of God. Every one of us can. And, and if enough of us do actually do this, inspire one, like, one candle light the other candle, and we just stoke each other's flame and purify everything not of love from the mind. Most of the work's in the mind. That's where the ignorance is kept. All illusion is in the mind. And if we can come to love collectively, oh my gosh, the power, the influence, the change that will happen in the collective consciousness of the entire planet. Ooh, like 100 Monkeys theory. You guys know the 100 monkeys? There, you know. You guys remember 100 Monkeys? Yeah, my wife remembers. She's heard it plenty of times. But in case you don't remember, true story, there was an isolated island with a species of monkey, but there were two different family groups of the monkeys separated by a tall mountain ridge. So, and they had zero contact with one another. And one day, one monkey on one side of the island starts washing his fruit in the river before he eats it. Before, they didn't care, they just eat the fruit, right? But he washed it. Monkey see, monkey do. So another monkey's like, copies him, washes fruit, and then eats it. And then a bunch more monkeys started to do it. And then by the time 100 monkeys on one side of the island started washing their fruit before eating it, something shifted in the collective consciousness of the monkeys of the island, and all the monkeys on the entire island, even the ones they had zero contact with, all started washing their fruit before they ate it. This is the collective consciousness. Remember, everything we do and are affects all around us. So if we become again the lovers of God and live in love, and enough of us are around, it potentially could shift the entire collective consciousness and bring more people to love. And honestly, that's the desire of every spiritual master, is every single one of their disciples also become the living example, be the master too. More and more and more devotees, so we can make real change in this world. I think I went off a little topic there a bit, but, but thank you for spurring class on more, Brother Meat. Appreciate ya.
Yeah, thanks for answering the questions.
Oh, you bet. My service, my pleasure. Anyone else happen to have a question? My wife, Yeti, crazy dogs.
Yeah, I didn't get the wind and the sun quickly, but you explained it very well.
Well, that is all God's grace, because I didn't get that for years. So if I got it now, it was my fervent prayers that God and Mother Tasha help me with these classes, because honestly I have no good qualifications. So anything coming out of this, anything good come out of this, that ain't me. That's all the blessing of Mother Tasha and the Lord. But yeah, it makes a little more sense, about force and choosing yourself. And that's also some, like, psychology. People try to reverse psychology, especially in sales. You make people think that that's actually what you want, I'm not telling you, but make you think that you actually want this, and then you buy the product. Like, that's, but we're not about manipulation, my gosh. And I'm a terrible salesman if it comes to material stuff. But yeah, that's, we got to choose it ourselves.
It's basically about the wrong message and the right message.
Even more than that, it's about, because both sides could even actually have the same message, for example, even the same words. What's wrong or right would be in following it purely, or in following one's own mind and tweaking it to your own mundane desires. And that's what happens. Like, for example, the crazy guy who was a man of blood, he, the religion of love, everything in the book, if you guys read it, and everything we read so far in class, is all beautiful, pure, uncorrupt truth of God. Every word in the religion of love book is true, is happening, has happened, will happen. It's 100% true, pure message of God. But even someone could take this pure message and go batty crazy with it. like the guy who's like, I believe this is a pure message, and I can memorize all the words. I want to spread this everywhere, and I will force people to believe it. This is for their own good, right? See, the problem is not the actual teachings. The problem is with misteachers, bad teachers, misleaders, and not following it purely. Now, she says you may have memorized the words, but you missed the message. You haven't actually heard anything. You can memorize it, but you actually haven't heard it, because remember, hearing comes from the action of obeying that teaching, applying that message in your life. And most of the people, they don't actually live the message. In fact, very few do. And we've seen this, and Mother Tasha commented that usually when we travel and you got crazy fanatics of a particular faith, and they're bad-mouthing other people and trying to force other people, most often not, they don't actually practice their religion. They don't. It's just all here. It's all here. It's all fire and anger and ignorance, and they're saying the right words. Even they're actually quoting the scriptures and parroting back the message of God. It's not the same, because that's, as we mentioned, you got to live the message, and they're not living it. They don't actually practice, and they don't engage in devotional service. How can you be a devotee of God if you won't engage in the devotional service of God? See, most people, they may know the words, but their practice of it, their applying of it isn't pure. In fact, they will live and act out of their own mind's interpretations of it, what they think is how I should be living this, or what I should be doing. And for most people, religion has become a religion of convenience. They make the message out to be how they can achieve what they want for themselves in this world, not for what God wants. That's the thing right there. So that would probably be the big kicker, is whom are you serving? Because the crazy, violent people, they're not serving God, they're serving themselves and what they want. They want to have the numbers. They want to have the power, the control, the wealth. They want to see this nation fall, this nation rise. It's their desires. They're not asking, what does God want? They're just looking, what I want, and how can I use religion to achieve that end, achieve my end. See, this is the selfishness, which is quite demonic. So the difference between the devotee and the non-devotee is whom they're serving. So the devotee is always thinking how I can serve and please God. Is this pleasing to the Lord? Is this purifying to my heart and mind? Whereas the non-devotee, even with all the right words, he's not thinking of his self-purification, not thinking of humbling and purifying himself, or God being pleased with him. He's just off to the races with his own batty interpretation, and very worldly minded, because there's no realization of the message, and no spiritual master to guide them, no bona fide one. Because you come across a real spiritual master like Mother Natasha, and she'll say, no, don't do that. Obviously. So most people do not have proper guidance, and most religious leaders are just misleaders, and we get led astray. And if we don't have misleaders to lead us astray, our own mind will do plenty to lead us astray. If we listen to our mind and not to authorities. And that's the importance of a spiritual master. They'll tell you what's what, and totally put in check your misgivings or misinterpretations, and tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear, and tell you what is, going to purify and help you grow, and not pad your bank account and grow your prestige and power in society. No, that's worldly stuff. No. But yeah, or vice versa. Yes, they got the completely wrong message. You're right. There's a lot of baddie philosophies out there that are man-made that cause a lot of great harm and lead our people astray. So thanks for sharing, brother. You're good. Any last words? No, that's the wrong. That's what some of these preachers. Any last words? Choose this or die. That nonsense. No, not that. That ain't love. Now we're all good? Okay. And there then. All glories to Mother Natasha. All glories to the religion of love. All glories to the assembled devotees. Jai.